Howdy ho, Maplers, and welcome to Ark, the Flora Pirate. Holy moly, this is definitely a class. I can understand now playing it myself why so many people have picked Ark as their main character, because good lord, there really isn't anything this class struggles with. It's good at mobbing, it's good at bossing. Its real only drawback for mobbing is that it's quite a bit more active than a lot of classes, but even then, there are lazy rotations for this class that give really good EXP rates, and there are like super sweaty rotations that really push this class for all it's worth. It kinda has a bit of everything for everyone. It's a jack of all trades that really excels at most of what it does. For the gear, it's all the same stuff I use across my 250s, just my meso accessories, since EXP buffs still cost mesos unfortunately, and I go through a lot of them. So, max out my meso rate on accessories, and then any other leftover accessory lines, we just roll with drop rate to fill them out. And then just my pirate gear from across the characters. Got a few pieces that are strength specific, a few pieces that are just holdovers from my dex gear. It all works out. Ark is fairly strong base damage wise. Having a few mismatched pieces really didn't affect the damage output all too much. And for the inner ability, we got kinda scammed. Sunny Sunday, 50% off honor, 700k. Yeah, it should have been enough for passives +1, but nah. My luck just isn't here today. We ended up with nothing. But yeah, for this prime line, ideally, like most new classes nowadays, passives +1 is just the best thing you can get, because Nexon's grand plan for balancing new classes is just overload their fourth job with as many passive skills that give a ton of final damage, crit damage, and what have you as possible. So, passives +1 is the best. There is an argument to be made for like 20% cooldown skip, but nah. Cooldown skip is RNG. I don't really like RNG at all, so I prefer not to go for cooldown skip in any way, shape, or form, but you can roll for cooldown skip as your secondary line if you want it. For the V matrix, Ark is actually fairly simple. You have a few of your skills that are very important, but primarily your boost nodes are what come in handy right out the gate. Of course though, in the very first spot, where it's always going to be, where it's always been, and where it will never leave. Decently simple. It's just the best decent skill you can possibly ask for. It's EXP, and it's drop rate. 100% uptime, dude. It's fantastic. Max it if you can. If not, even at level 1, it beats out most of the competition. And then one of the skills that Ark should put on right away is Devious Nightmare. This is your passive skill, which empowers your Ominous Nightmare skill for both your Flora and Spectre mode, and they each have their own separate cooldown, which allows you to do some pretty swanky rotations with like maximum sweat rotations where you're constantly switching in and out of Flora mode to get as many Devious Nightmare procs as possible, because this is a big fucking hitbox. Like, this thing is ginormous, and it's on an insanely low cooldown. It's really, really good. This is what allows those really neat rotations for Ark, where you can just use skills in one direction as Flora mode, clear the whole map, and then swap to Spectre, go right back with your Spectre skills, and clear the whole map in the other direction. It's a very, very, very handy skill, and it's one I'd probably put on right away, even before your boost nodes, if you can get away with it. Because this dude is a lot of your mobbing, especially in Flora mode. Your Flora mode skills are kinda small, but they do a fair job of mobbing in most maps, but this definitely picks up a little bit of the slack that they leave behind. And then, of course, you're a pirate class, dude. You get to cheat the game. Another holy symbol, loaded dice. You just slap this on, lock your dice at 6, and boom, bam, you got a free second holy symbol. Even if you suck at mobbing, your EXP rates are gonna be good. Pirates are the best, dude. This is why we save the best for last. And for the boost nodes, Ark is one of Nexon's special little classes, where you have 8 skills that you need to boost, and 3 trios requires 9 skills. So unfortunately, there is one set of skills that you're gonna have to slap on a burner trio. It sucks. I hate it. I wish they could do something to fix this, but your important trios right out the gate are Ominous Nightmare, Impending Death, and Basic Charge. These are your common skills. They're both for bossing and mobbing. They're fantastic. You want them right away. And then Abyssal Charge, Creeping Terror, and Gust Dive. Those are all your vitally important skills. And then this burner trio. Unfortunately, also required because Unstoppable Impulse and Scarlet Drive are pretty much skills you're going to be using 100% of your time while playing Ark. I don't know what their fascination is for having only 8 boostable usable skills, while trios only work in sets of 3, but it's just something you're going to have to deal with as Ark. You'll have one skill that's quad boosted, Omega Strong. But you pretty much want to boost everything for Ark because this is one of those classes where you're going to be using everything. All your skills all the time for both bossing and mobbing. They're all vitally important. And then for the other Ark-specific skills, you've got Abyssal Recall, also known as Gender Inequality the skill. For male Arks, this is your nice long cutscene ability. For female Arks, it's a spear. It doesn't do anything different damage-wise for male or female Arks, but it does have a very big visual difference between the genders. The skill itself is pretty insane. This is effectively an iframe for its entire duration. It's quite long. It's also effectively a burst skill, so double whammy. What this does is actually mob so much better than it does burst. This thing, especially because of spawn boosters and GMS, this thing is way more powerful as a mobbing tool than it is as a bossing tool in my eyes. Abyssal Recall can effectively kill about 350 mobs by itself in some maps with just a single cast on Frenzied Spawn. It's pretty redonkulous, its mobbing capabilities. It'll effectively full clear small maps by itself for its entire duration. I love this skill, it's fantastic. It gives me big Dawn Warrior Sun vibes. Effectively, it's just a little break you get every 200 seconds when you use this while mobbing. 10 out of 10, I love it. It does have a small drawback in that, for whatever reason, this skill completely locks you out of literally everything else in the game while its animation is playing. Nexon was so goddamn proud of the animation they made for this and then took away for female characters that they literally do not let you do anything else but watch the animation while it plays. Can't open your inventory, can't open the minimap, can't do diddly shit. Once you press this key, you're locked into the animation for the entire animation. You can't even manually cancel this thing. They were just so darn proud of the animation they made, they force you to look at it. It's like, that's the only real drawback the skill has. It's annoying, to be sure, but it's something you can work around while training. And then the other sort of really important skill for Ark, Infinity Spell. This thing is working double duty here for Ark. This is a mobbing skill as well as a bossing skill. Primarily, it's sitting in the bossing camp. This thing is where a lot of your damage is going to come from while bossing. This thing will just spew out magic bullets like nobody's business. It does truckloads and truckloads of damage. But spewing out magic bullets is pretty darn handy for mobbing as well, because this thing summons a lot of magic bullets, and despite that these things don't do very much damage individually, when you have a bajillion of them on the screen, they're gonna kill shit. Just by accident. So there is merit to maxing this skill out quickly, kind of like a Hayato's Phantom Blade, because its duration does increase with level. There is value in maxing this skill early. I don't think it's better than maxing Decent Holy Symbol right out the gates, but there is merit to it because having this up more for your training is definitely nice. I never really felt like Ark was lacking heavily in the mobbing department without having it maxed, but I definitely see where it could have increased my EXP rates by a little bit, maybe even like 5% per hour. better on like the total EXP. It's a very, very handy skill, and it's one, if you can afford to, I would highly recommend maxing for both your mobbing and your bossing. But if you don't have the nodes for it to level it up right away, it's a-okay at a lower level. I just ended up leaving mine at level 14. That's where I ended up when I ran out of nodes for this character, and it did more than its fair share of carrying for this class. It's insane damage for bossing. It's really handy for mobbing. It's a great skill. There's really no downside other than the cooldown. Ark is in the unfortunate spot where a lot of its cooldowns, especially its bossing cooldowns, are incredibly long. Nobody likes to be a 4-minute burst class, but somebody's gotta do it right. Ark is just that unfortunate somebody. And then the last Ark specific skill, the skill I didn't put on until 250, to be honest. Your endlessly starving beast, this hungry hippo of a skill, is only for bossing. Its mobbing utility is non-existent. It will lag you more than it will help you for mobbing. It'll lag you for bossing too, but that's another issue entirely. This thing does a lot of damage. This is a burst skill through and through. Luckily for Ark, it's only on a 2-minute cooldown, not a 4-minute cooldown, so you do get to use this more than something like Infinity Spell, but it is strictly just a burst ability. It doesn't really have any passive damage, it doesn't have any mobbing capabilities besides its one big bursty chomp. It's just bossing, so for the training side of things, you really just leave this off your V matrix for more important stuff like character building, or your decent sharp eyes, or will skill. There's just more important skills when it comes to mobbing. This is really the last thing you're going to be throwing on, or something you put on specifically to do your dojo runs each week. And then, of course, decent sharp eyes, decent speed infusion down here. You don't need it for training, you only need decent speed infusion if you want to hit attack speed 0 with green pot, so that's why it's down here. And then, of course, True Arachnid's Reflection. You get it for completing the Will storyline. It's decent mobbing, decent bossing. It's also a nice little summon. Ark is a pirate class, so your Lucid Soul, if you have one, does okay-ish damage. You know, not a warrior tier soul, but it's still no mage soul, so having the Will skill definitely helps out in the mobbing department. And speaking of mobbing, for 200 until 205, I'll be honest, I don't really like any of the Vanishing Journey maps for Ark. They all just flow really weird. I'm not a big fan. So honestly, for 200 until 205, I would recommend just staying in whichever of the Forsaken Excavation Site maps that you like. Or hey, if you like the Fox Treetop maps, those are also good as well to get to 205. But Fez 2, Fez 4, both are fantastic options. I usually prefer Fez 4 when it comes to leveling mules because this map is actually stacked with mobs, and it works out pretty handy for your skills as an Ark. While you're in Flora mode, you just drop down and attack left and right to clear mobs as you fall. You don't even really need a spawn booster for Ark when you're training in this map, because I trained my Ark to 210 originally as my final character for AK Legion, and I did not move my Frenzy across for that character. This map is super duper jacked with mobs, and you can easily go up and down the map just using your Ark skills alone. There's no real set in stone rotation, it's kind of just clearing stuff as you go. This is where you'll kind of get a feel for how all of your skills work together, and how your Flora skills and your bullets function together. And you'll get the 205 here, easy peasy. This low level curve for 200 to 210 is really quick nowadays. You're not going to be spending too many hours in this level range as long as you have buffs up. And that'll carry you on into 205 and get you on into Reverse City, into your first good set of training areas, your first Arcane River training areas. And for Ark, you really have a handful of options here. You have, if you don't have the Arcane Force for the hidden maps, you've of course got Tier Boys 1. It's literally just 2 platforms, straight map, flash jump, and basic spell. You don't even need to use any of your combo skills. It's a fantastic map, but if you have the Arcane Force for it, if you have the damage for it, both of the hidden maps in Vanish or in Reverse City are very good for Ark. I did my training a little bit split between the two since I was testing out the maps. Hidden Research Train definitely favors the player who has a Lucid Soul, since you can set her there on the left side, and then all you have to do is focus on clearing this right little clump of platforms. There is no real super set rotation for like a flow tier skills. That doesn't really come in until like the Yum Yum Field and Lachlan maps where you actually have set rotations, but for these low level areas, you kinda just use all of your skills on cooldown. When you're in Spectre mode, your ginormous hitboxes are pretty much going to carry you because pretty much every one of your skills here can just about hit every platform imaginable. And even just using attacks on cooldown, using your skills as you move through the map, you're going to get very good EXP rates in either one of these choices. For the Hidden Underground train, this is where I did a majority of my training because at this level range my Lucid Soul really wasn't doing all that much for damage, and just like the other one, you can just start using your skills and moving through the map. Just using your tall hitboxes to clear the platforms that are up higher, or if you do have a Lucid Soul, just drop her on one of the sides. I'd usually throw her on the left there because it's more out of the way, and you can more easily clear the middle here, especially while you're in Spectered mode. And these maps are very good. The base EXP for these mobs is super duper high for the level range, so you can honestly stay here until 220 if you don't have the Arcane Force to move up to Yum Yum Island at 215. This map really doesn't fall off until you get into Lachlan levels. So either one of these will carry you on into either 220 or 215. At 215 if you decide to go to Yum Yum Island. The Hidden Iliad Field is, of course, a good map. Ark is no exception to the trend. Hidden Iliad Field is a fantastic map. This sort of has a rotation, but it's not the cleanest. This definitely could be cleaned up. If you have a Lucid Soul, I would just drop her on the left side here, and then the rotation is just double dashing up, then using your blue dash to get down on the platform, using Scarlet Rush to move to the right, and then just fall off the right side of the map and basic spell your way back to the left side, turning in when Devious Nightmare is off cooldown and attacking towards the center of the map so that you get the most mobs possible out of that skill. It is definitely not the smoothest rotation because the platforms are kind of tight together. There's no easy way to get back to the bottom once you're on the top. You kind of just have to fall ladder style or down jump to get back down, but it works out. The flow doesn't get interrupted too much despite the wonky platforming, and it works as an alternative if you get bored of Hidden Research Train or the Hidden Underground Train. It'll carry on into Lachlan, pretty nice and easy. And Lachlan, oh man, Lachlan is kind of where I gained a new appreciation for Ark. And it wasn't right out the gates either. I kind of had to accidentally stumble into this rotation, but oh man, it was a really fun rotation. For 220 until 234. Honestly, I can't recommend anything but Outlaw Street 2. I completely stumbled in back-assward into this rotation, but it feels so good on Ark. If you have a Lucid Soul here on this right side, and you're going to be flash jumping over, drop your skill there, and then from the left of this ladder, ideally, you want to dash once, then gust dive, and then dash again. You have to do it rather quickly, or else your unstoppable impulse will go on cooldown. So you dash, dive, dash, flash jump at the top, and then Ominous Nightmare over to clear, or to help Lucid clear. And this rotation feels so good because since you're killing the mobs here on this bottom platform, your bullets can either go to one of two places. It can go to this platform right here and kill these 3 mobs, or it can go up and to the left and kill the 5 mobs up there. Both of which are beneficial. Only one of those platforms you're actually ever clearing, and that's why you're jumping along the bottom here. But the other platform, you never really get up to, so you have about a 50-50 chance that RNG will send a bullet where you're not going to kill mobs normally. The only thing you don't really use in this rotation is Scarlet Rush, so if you need it for the buff, I would say just use it here on the bottom platform since it's a decent enough place to use it, and then just keep your rotation going. This map doesn't necessarily require a Lucid Soul, it just helps out a little bit in the kills per hour department to have one. If you don't do the second dash and decide to use Scarlet there in the middle and rely more heavily on your Lucid Soul, your rotation does become more consistent, but it requires you to have a one-shotting Lucid Soul. Generally though, just this simple rotation is way more than enough to make Outlaw Street 2 better than pretty much every other map I tested while here in Lachlan. It was pushing close to 29k mobs per hour, and oh man, it just feels so slick to go through this map. This is really where I sort of like it got a feeling sort of like back on Mihail, where just every skill clicked in place for a rotation. There's not really many feelings out there better in this game when things just line up perfectly like this. And it works out great. For your Spectre mode, it's kind of just as Spectre mode does. There's no real super set rotation for Spectre mode, kind of just you're relying on your ginormous hitboxes. And even without a set rotation, your hitboxes alone are more than enough to pretty much clear the map. And of course, you can use Abyssal Recall here on cooldown to clear the map. It can hit literally everything here on this right side. It kind of leaves Lucent Soul on her own there to handle everything that's spawning on the right. So in a pinch, you can also double up and use your Blissful Restraint Bind on this right side here with your Lucent Soul, and then use Abyssal Recall. So you're effectively full clearing both sides of the map on like the same-ish timers. It works out, you don't need to stack them. You can also use Blissful Restraint here on the left side to use it as a pseudo loot timer, since it'll clear the entire left side for its whole duration, and you actually get a chance to go around to all of these wonky platforms and pick stuff up. But however you decide to do it, the map is absolutely fantastic. Like I said, nothing else that I tested in Lachlan even came close to competing with its rates. It is so goddamn good. And it was hard leaving the map because I was worried, just like I was with like Mihail back in the day, that I wasn't really gonna find a map that was better. I was really worried that Ark peaked in Lachlan and that it just wouldn't get better from there on out. But luckily, Matt came through and saved the day. Showed me a nice little LP1 rotation that works both for Flora mode and for Spectre mode. What a good guy. 234 until 244, LP1. You're taking a very small hit in the mob kills per hour, but once you start out leveling those Lachlan mobs, you kinda have to move. This map will only push about 27k mobs per hour, but that's more than enough from this corner. You just want to impulse up, double impulse, then dash, then use Gust Dive, then Scarlet Drive, and then across the bottom, just flash jump with basic spell, and your rotation is pretty much this in a circle. The cooldowns don't exactly line up perfectly here. There is a bit of waiting, especially for your Abyssal Charge Dive. It doesn't have the best timer for quick rotations like this, as being 9 seconds. If it was 7, it would fit a lot better into these rotations. But it works out, you can just use basic dive if it's on cooldown. And this map feels good. While you're in Spectre mode, just again, you're pretty much just abusing Spectre mode's ginormous hitboxes, and the fact that their mobbing is really, really strong. You'll pretty much never struggle to one-shot with your Spectre mode skills, just because they do so much goddamn damage. The only thing you have to worry about is make sure you don't accidentally like double tap your Spectre or your skills, so that you don't animation cancel them. You kind of want the mobility they offer when it comes to mobbing. However, there are some instances where you could use the animation cancel just to keep yourself in place while also getting the mobbing portion out. And this map is honestly good enough to stay until 250. If you don't have the damage to move to Celis as soon as you open it up at 240, honestly, you could just stick it out here until 250. This map feels really good. Anything that has a nice flow to it is always a good area to train. And the EXP here doesn't fall off until after 250, so it's more than good enough an option. But at 244, of course, if you want to go to that next training area, if you're strong enough to go to the next training area, there's a Plunging Depths map for you. It's not PD4 this time, it's PD1. It did have the nicest rotation. Celis is definitely where I spent the most time testing rotations here for Ark, because on Frenzied Spawn, constantly swapping between Spectre and Flora mode while you're training is really more effort than it's worth. The cooldown on switching between your forms has a longer cooldown than Frenzied Spawn cooldown, so you're losing out on mob kills a lot of the time trying to force a heavy sweat rotation on this class. So finding a map that has both a good Flora mode rotation and a Spectre mode rotation is more often than not beneficial. And PD1 just happened to have the nicest feeling rotation for both Flora mode and for Spectre mode. Devious Nightmare on cooldown because of its giant hitbox. And then your rotation is pretty much just moving in a circle. You want to be using all of your skills here to get your charged bullets because they are going to be doing a lot of your mobbing. The linchpin of this rotation, honestly, is a little bit RNG because you want your vacuum bullet to always pull mobs from the top of the map. If the vacuum bullet goes down, you're kind of losing out on efficiency. This is kind of the closest class to Thunderbreaker in terms of like RNG reliance for its EXP rates. My peak here was 140 bill, and I think my average was somewhere around like 120. So there's definitely a range for your EXP rates depending on how much your bullet RNG trolls you. But more often than not, the rotation works out where your bullet will go towards the top of the map, or it'll clip something here in the middle platform and it will pull from the bottom and the top of the map, which is probably a little bit better for frenzied spawn, but it's a lot less common. Really, the only way I've found to like somewhat make this consistent is just make sure you're using Gust Dive at like the highest point in the map possible without going too high that Gust Dive clips you onto that top platform. Because like a Ron's downward dash, Gust Dive can clip you onto platforms if you're close enough to them from underneath. It'll just snap you up that little distance to get you up onto the platform. But your rotation here is literally just going in a circle. The map feels nice, it has very good loot rotation since it's really small, and then of course, while you're in Spectre mode, the rotation is much the same. The only thing for Spectre mode here is there's really no need to ever use your Unbridled Chaos because its hitbox isn't tall enough unless you up jump to hit the top, and your Insatiable Hunger just has a bigger hitbox vertically, so it'll clip all the mobs that are above you that you're not going to be hitting outside of Devious Nightmare. So there's really no reason to use it. The only way you can sort of make it useful is if it comes off cooldown and you use it just to clear the bottom platform and you go up to the top. It's not really that much of an increase for your EXP rates, but it's one of those little things you can do to get a little more mobs per hour out of your rotation. But like I said at the start, there are very sweaty rotations for Ark that can push this class into larger maps where you're constantly swapping in and out of Spectre mode. But more often than not on Frenzied spawn, I noticed that there was negligible to no difference in the EXP rates. Ark is definitely a class that is more suited to base spawn rates or Wild Totem spawn rates. Frenzy is just a little bit too quick for this class, and despite how smooth it is, when you try to force it to go beyond its like natural mobbing speed, it starts to get real clunky. Like, swapping in and out of Spectre mode pretty much on cooldown feels a little bit ping dependent. Like, there is the caveat that you have to not be in the middle of an animation to actually use Master Corruption to swap between them, which kind of feels a bit clunky, because if you're in like the end part of the animation for Devious Nightmare, that counts as being in the middle of a skill, so you have to wait until it ends to swap. And it was just more effort than it was worth for me when testing these rotations. Finding rotations for Flora mode specifically and for Spectre mode specifically ended up feeling and just being a lot better for my EXP rates. So that's why all of my rotations had one specific rotation for Flora and one specific for Spectre. With all of these maps beyond Lachlan, it just ended up feeling better for the class. It gave it a more natural flow, because this class has some real fluid gameplay. Like, I understand why so many people picked up Ark as their main class, because goddamn, this is a fluid class. Like, with how many combo skills and how many active abilities you have, it doesn't ever really feel clunky outside of when you're trying to force your rotation in and out of Spectre mode constantly. But like, this is how Kane should have felt. And it's like, it puts a new dampener on my opinion of Kane because of how much better Ark feels than Kane. This is This is honestly what they should be aspiring for like future combo classes. Ark feels amazing. It has very, very little clunk to it. It's great. It's a combo class that has very high ceilings for creative rotations. It's very, very mobile for pretty much everything, for mobbing, for bossing, for spirit savior, what have you. This class is insanely mobile. Fuck, it's the only class in the game who can jump off a rope and then up jump. Hello? Revolutionary class. It's so good in the mobility department. It's a very mobile mobber, so it doesn't like being constrained to really small maps, and unfortunately that's kind of the meta for Frenzied Spawn, because larger maps are usually too large because of how fast Frenzied Spawn is, which is why, again, I'll restate, on Wild Totem spawn speed, Ark is probably the best class it can be. It has the flexibility to actually train in medium-large size maps without being inefficient in your map clear. Ark on Frenzied Spawn is more so about like finding a comfortable rotation that does clear the map, more so than finding a big enough map that you can barely clear as quickly as possible, because that'll burn your hands real quick. Like, it's a very nice and fluid class. It's very simple. Once you get the rotations down, you can almost muscle memory this entirely. Like, the only map that really requires visual cues for me that had a good rotation was the Outlaw Street 2. Because it's a larger map, you pretty much had to line up with that left-hand rope on the bottom side, but I guess if you do the rotation enough, you could probably get the muscle memory down. But for LP1 and for PD1, I got to the point where I could just do these effectively without looking at my maple window. Just like out of my peripheral, see what side of the map I'm on, I know what I need to do for my button inputs. It feels really good to play Ark. I was worried coming into Ark, especially since I play all of these characters at attack speed 2. I never use attack speed 0. That animation canceling would be a complex nightmare, you know. Blaster PTSD. But actually, animation canceling for Ark is fairly simple. There are two methods you can do to animation cancel, and the first one is just using either, let's say you're Inspector mode, you use Ominous Nightmare, then the skill you want to use, here, I can demonstrate. Let's say you want to use Ominous Nightmare, then Unbridled Chaos. All you have to do is press Ominous Nightmare, Unbridled Chaos, and then Ominous Nightmare, and it'll cancel the movement portion of Unbridled Chaos. You just tap one, then the other, then the first one again. The other way you can do it is tapping Ominous Nightmare and then double tapping your Unbridled Chaos. And if you double tap, don't triple tap. If you double tap, it'll animation cancel the movement portion, and you can just keep comboing into your next Unbridled Nightmare. It's a bit more finicky using the double tap method, because if you triple tap, you'll just yeet yourself off into oblivion. So you gotta have some metered key presses if you're gonna go with the double tap method. The one I kind of fell into using was just alternating between your Ominous Nightmare, whichever skill you need to cancel, and then back to Ominous Nightmare. It just has a better flow to it for me for canceling the skills, so you don't just fly off into oblivion when you're trying to use your DPS rotations. And honestly, I kind of like animation canceling on Ark. I don't know how I feel about attack speed 0 with this class, because Ark has a love-hate relationship with attack speed 0. The higher the attack speed goes, the harder it gets to animation cancel beneficially. It's kind of a situation where just holding down Ominous Nightmare ends up dealing more damage a lot of the times than actually comboing your other skills in your bossing rotation on attack speed 0. I'm not a fan of that. I like the animation canceling on Ark. It feels nice, it looks really cool too. And so having it sort of break because of GMS's attack speed 0 cap feels real bad. Like I mentioned, your spell bullets are kind of RNG. You can sort of manipulate them. They fly out. Excuse me. They fly out and they choose targets based on where you are in the map. So if you need them to go to a specific location, you can try to position your body in the right place to get the bullets to go to the right area, but it's really hard to get it down. I tried for the longest time while testing maps in Celis to get a rotation for PD4 to work, and honestly, I still think there's merit to PD, or PD5 rather. I still think there's merit to PD5 as the best possible Ark map in Celis, as long as you have one-shotting basic bullets, but it's really hard, dude. Like, I tried so many different rotations, so many different visual cues on like where to line up my Scarlet Rush and my Gust Charge dive to get the empowered bullets to go where I need them, and it's the best I was able to get is like a 70% accuracy for my Gust Charge dive to go where I wanted it and the Scarlet Bullet to go where I wanted it. It's more effort than it's worth trying to force these things. Having a larger map with more spread out spawn, it's easier to work with generally, but on frenzied spawn, stuff just keeps respawning when you don't want it to, and a mob will respawn that's closer to you than the mob you want to be targeted, and your bullets just go all cattywampus and it's a fucking shit show. So I don't know how to feel about the spell bullets. On one hand, they're very, very good. On the other hand, it kinda sucks that they're RNG. You can turn them on manual, but I would really never recommend it. That's almost as egregious a sin as manual possession was for Kane. It feels so much smoother having them be automatic, even despite the clunkiness the RNG can cause. The vacuum bullet specifically, I have problems with. Its range is wonky, the vacuum range is wonky, sometimes it just doesn't kill shit. I don't know. I like the class, I like the vacuum bullet because it's really nice, but there's some goofy stuff going on. Like, there'll be times where the vacuum bullet will pull mobs from 3 platforms but not kill a single one of them, as like the game just forgot to deal the damage. There'll be other times where it'll pull all the mobs down to it and then just won't explode. I don't know. It might just be my bad ping. It might just be something where like I grabbed a rope at a wrong time and for whatever reason it doesn't deal damage if you're on a rope. I don't know how to explain it, but it was rare enough an occurrence that it didn't hinder my EXP rates heavily, but it happened often enough that I noticed it. Another thing that's sort of weird, Devious Nightmare is, it feels like a 1-part attack, despite it very much so being a 2-part attack, because the second part, the actual Devious Nightmare, your 5th job skill, casts almost instantaneously after your Endless Dream. There's really no way to efficiently use this while moving. This is most so noticeable in like your PD4 or PD5, if you ever want to try that map. More so noticeable for PD5 and for Outlaw Street 2, where it would be ideal if you could use Endless Dream, have it clear its 6 mobs, fly a little bit while mid-air, and then have Devious Nightmare go off to kill its mobs. That would make it so much smoother, but it chains into each other so quickly. You're pretty much just double upping on the mobs that Endless Nightmare are hitting, so like a lot of the times at most, you're only ever getting 4 extra mob kills from Devious Nightmare, unless it's just a huge clump of mobs on top of you because of Frenzied Spawn. It feels awkward. It's something you can get used to while you're making rotations, but it's definitely something I noticed while trying to build rotations around using Devious Nightmare to clear more mobs than normal. What else we got? Oh, I already mentioned it at the start. I don't know why Abyssal Recall locks you out of doing literally everything. It's so stupid. The amount of times I pressed Abyssal Recall just for a rune to spawn or me to notice that I didn't buff and then just watch my EXP fizzle away. It's so sad. It's so dumb. I think one of the future patches they allow you to manually cancel Abyssal Recall. That'll be a godsend. Please, I can't wait. That'll make this skill a lot more user-friendly. Dude, like I said at the start, I don't really have that many egregious downsides to Ark. This class is really good. Like, it's top 3 in the game for mobility. Its mobbing is honestly way better than it feels like it should be. It's really good. Like, it may not be the greatest in the damage dealing department anymore. It might have been dethroned by Adele and a Ho Young, but Ark still puts out more than enough damage for bossing. It has plenty of damage, plenty of mobility, plenty of iframes. Its mobbing department isn't really lacking either. This is probably one of, if not the best combo classes the game has currently, and something I would really recommend everyone play, at least to get the 210 link. For me, I saved Ark to be the final character I did when I was originally getting all the classes in the game to 200, and I had a load of fun getting it to 210. I didn't even get its 5th job skill, I was just using its 4th job skills, and it was a lot of fun. And now getting it to 250, heck, Ark was a ton of fun. It's not my favorite mobbing style in the universe. A lot of the rotations require a little more focus than I'd like for something that you'd have to train for umpteen hours in the higher levels, but for as smooth as this feels, if you want a combo class, I don't think you can go wrong picking Ark. Like, it does no wrong in my eyes. Ark is probably a 9 out of 10. It's a really, really good class. I feel like I saved so many of the good classes here right for the very end, going from Demon Slayer into Ark, that I have a high bar for the next 250, the 40th 250. We're finally doing Shade. Ooh, we're finally getting to the unknown class, and after Demon Slayer and Ark, boy howdy, Shade's got some big shoes to fill. I'm hoping Shade plays out okay. I don't like the animation canceling on Bomb Punch, but I should be able to get used to it as I play it more. But that is for the future. This has been Ark. If you have any questions about Ark, about my journey to getting all classes in the game to 250, or about playing MapleStory in general, do ask in the comments. I make it a point to answer any and all questions you guys might have, because I still love this game. I've been playing it for 18 years and I still can't get enough of it. So I like to spread a little bit of the information I've garnered over my many years. But that has been Ark. Might not be the last we see of Ark. Maybe once I go for 11k Legion, we'll pick Ark up again for some fun. But I hope you enjoyed the video. And until next time, happy mapling.